we're going to start chapter 6. So chapter 6 starts by simplifying rational expressions. And rational is another word for fractions. So chapter 6 is all about fractions. So we need to remember some of the things that we've already learned about fractions. One of those things that we've already learned about fractions is how to simplify them if there's only one term. So this is a monomial divided by a monomial. We did this back in chapter 4 where we factored it and we reduced it by marking out the same factors. Or remember, this was x squared divided by x, so there were two of them there. 2 minus 1 gives me 1 on the top. Remember that exponent rule that we had in chapter 4. We can use that here since it's a monomial divided by a monomial. However, on part B here, when it turns into something besides monomials, when it turns into binomials, this subtract sign right here glues these things together. So I can never cross out something on this one without crossing out something on this one as well. Same thing happens here. You'd think you might be able to take this x and that x squared like you did up here, but you can't. This has got a subtract sign in it. All marking things out are done, off. You can't do it until after it's been factored. So notice that it went here as a monomial. I factored it. A monomial, factored it. Started marking things off after it was factored. So in order to do that, you have to factor it before you cross anything out. So this one factors into x plus 3y and x minus 3y, which is what last chapter's test was about. And this one has a greatest common factor of 3y, and that leaves you with x minus 3y. Now I have a factor here that's x minus 3y, and a factor here that's x minus 3y. So yes, I get to go ahead and cross those things off. That leaves me with x plus 3y. Now, some people are going to say that I can get rid of that 3 and that 3. Oh, no, I can't. There's a subtract sign or an add sign. That means these two things are together. If you're going to touch this part of it, you have to do something with that part of it. So since it doesn't have a 3 here, I cannot put that 3 and that 3 together. Same thing with the y. This doesn't have a y. Nope, all bets are off. I'm finished. Done, complete. Let's try it again. So this is a trinomial divided by a binomial. There's an add or subtract sign there. So, nope, can't cross anything off. I can't do that 25 and that 40. That's a no. So I have to factor the top one, which would be x minus 5 and x minus 8. I have to factor the bottom one, which would be 5 plus x and 5 minus x, because remember, this is a difference of 2 squares. And I would love to be able to cross this one off with this one, except this one has a positive x and this one has a negative x. This one has a negative 5 and this one has a positive 5. So what we do is we rewrite this one as negative 1 times x minus 5. And then I get to mark this x minus 5 off with this x minus 5, but it leaves me with a negative 1. Now, the x minus 8 and the x plus 5, no, I cannot touch these x's because they are attached to an add or subtract sign. So my final answer there with that one would be x minus 8 over x plus 5, and it's got a negative sign in front of it. Okay, so let's do a couple of them then. Again, I got this worksheet from Kuta Software, my favorite. So we're just going to do a couple of problems on here. Let's just start with number 1. First of all, is there an add or subtract sign that's going to keep me from working the problem as if I could just go ahead and factor some things out? Well, that's a subtract sign, but it doesn't affect specifically either the top or the bottom. So then this becomes a problem similar to this one, where all we have to do is factor it and reduce it. So 6 will go into 36, 6 times 6 will go into 42 7 times. So I'm left with a 6 and a 7 from the 36 and 42. And now what about the x cubed and the x squared? Well, there's a 3 here and a 2 here. We subtract them, and we end up with 3 minus 2, which is 1. So my final answer is 6x over 7. Okay, so let's try number 7 then. Number 7 is 2r minus 4 and r minus 2. Don't have a lot of room here, so I can't write as big as I want to. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on another sheet. This has a subtract sign. This has a subtract sign. So no, I cannot put that 2 and that 2 together. Nope, not going to happen. The first thing I have to do then is factor. According to what we did in chapter 5, there's a greatest common factor here of 2, which leaves me with 2 times r minus 2 on the top. And there is no greatest common factor here, so I'm just going to leave that as r minus 2. Then this r minus 2 can reduce with that r minus 2, and I'm left with 2 over 1. Now, somebody's going to say, can't I just write that as 2? And I'm going to go, sure, just write that as 2. I'm okay with that. Next one I want to try is number 11. Number 11 is v minus 5 over v squared minus 10v plus 25. Again, this is a binomial. This is a trinomial. I cannot do this because there's an add or subtract sign in my way. So the first thing that I have to do is try and factor it. The top doesn't even have a greatest common factor of anything besides 1, but I can write that as 1 times v minus 5. And somebody's going to say, do you have to? And I'm going to go, nah, it all depends on what you want. And so then this is going to be v minus 5 and v minus 5. And you can check and see if that's correct, but I'm telling you that it is. And so now this v minus 5 can be crossed out with that v minus 5. And I'm left with a 1 over v minus 5. Now you'll notice that on this problem, I put the 1 there because I wanted to show you where it came from. You don't have to put the 1, but I can never cross out everything on the top of the fraction with everything on the bottom of the fraction and not leave myself with something. And it's never 0 because these are multiplication problems. So that's got to be left as a 1 over v minus 5. If you don't put the 1 there, then you lose the fraction part of it, and that's not an acceptable answer for that then. Okay, last one that I want to look at is number 24. Number 24, and this is the second page of that worksheet, is 9x squared plus 81x, over x cubed plus 8x squared minus 9x. And that's an 81 there. Okay, so there are add or subtract signs there, so I'm going to have to do some factoring before I can start crossing anything out. So let's see. The first thing I see is I'm going to have a 9 and an x here, and it's going to leave me with x plus 9. And on the bottom then, I'm going to have an x in everything.
The comforting aroma of home.
So it's going to factor, first of all, like that. I don't get to mark it. Well, I do get to mark something out there. I can mark out those x's since they're factors. And that'll leave me with just a 9 up there and an x plus 9. And now I have to worry about this. So let's see if we can't factor that. X, 9, 1. Needs to be positive. I need that to be negative. And again, you should always check these and make sure that these are right. And let's see. Then I have the x plus 9. I can mark off the x plus 9s, and I'm left with x minus 1 on the bottom. Again, somebody's going to say, do I have to put those parentheses there? And I'm going to go, no. So this section is about reducing fractions, and we reduce fractions only after we have factored them. The only time that I can mark out things without factoring it by using greatest common factor or trial and error or factoring by grouping, the only time I get to do that is when I have a monomial divided by a monomial. Otherwise, parentheses are it. You get your parentheses, you see if you can match them and mark them out. Okay, good luck. Make sure you contact me if you have trouble. Bye.